and I know you've been following this very, very closely, as have other rebels on staff. But Sheila, tell me right off the bat, what was the biggest revelation to date for you?
I think the biggest revelations came on, I would guess, probably Monday and Wednesday.
Okay.
So those are the days when they had the grown-ups testifying, the not local busybodies who complain about everything, and the non-politicians. So those were the days that they had senior government bureaucrats who seem apolitical. You can tell they are anti-convoy. They just didn't want this problem in their town. But they were honest. They said the truckers were negotiating in good faith. We heard from the city manager and Jim Watson's chief of staff, Mayor Jim Watson's chief of staff. They all said the truckers were negotiating in good faith. The truckers were not the reason that the negotiations to end the so-called siege of the Capitol, they were not the reasons that stopped happening. It, in fact, was Justin Trudeau. Yep. Because a deal had been struck, and there are receipts, as the kids say, signed documents back and forth between senior government bureaucrats and even Mayor Jim Watson, even though he likes to deny that on the stand, that there was a deal struck to move the trucks out of the downtown. They were doing it. They had already moved 40 trucks. They had moved as many trucks as possible. They were strained for police resources to continue to move the trucks. And that was one of the reasons they kept asking the OPP and the RCMP for more cops. And it wasn't necessarily to come in and bust heads. It was to help get those. It's a major operation to move. You know, they said it was approaching 1,000 trucks out of the downtown core. They were doing their best to do it. They were moving them on the 14th the night of the 13th and the morning of the 14th. And then Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act. All the cops that were working to get the trucks out of the downtown core were then redeployed to the protest. It stopped the movement of the trucks, and it started the chaos that happened right after that. It all stemmed from the invocation of the Emergencies Act. I think that was a major revelation, is that a deal had been struck to end the so-called torment on Ottawa residents. And I say that with great exaggeration. And then
and Sheila, if I may jump in here, the torment of the Ottawa residents, what you said earlier, the Ottawa busybodies that are always complaining about something. I think it's very important. We have to correct the narrative. I mean, I was there for several days reporting on the demonstration, and the two things you always heard about was the intolerable noise pollution with those truck horns going off and the economic smackdown of the city of Ottawa. Two things. One is, I don't know, maybe people in Ottawa are snowflakes. When I got to my hotel, which was right in downtown Ottawa, literally surrounded by these trucks, blaring their horns. As soon as my head hit the pillow, it was lights out. I was asleep. Secondly, Sheila, I did a report, as you may know, where I was looking at all the convoy protesters, because you had well over 100,000 people converging on Parliament Hill, going to a Tim Hortons, going to a restaurant shop. Yeah. They were closed on their own accord. No one told them to close down, and they missed out on an economic bonanza. The few restaurants that did remain open had lineups out the door. No violence, no vandalism, no harassment. So I think it's important, don't you, that we correct this narrative that this was not a siege on Ottawa businesses. They brought that siege upon themselves. I don't know, maybe believing the garbage they read in the mainstream media.
Well, that's the thing. You had 100,000 people coming to your city to spend money, if their money wasn't cut off by the federal government, by the way, to spend money after you've had 2 years of lockdowns. You should have been grateful for that. Instead, you saw them as foreign invaders. And this goes to a point that somebody else made to me the other day, but it was so salient and so good. There is a real classist thing happening here. When you hear from these Ottawa busybodies, they are really offended. This laptop and pajamas class, these largely government bureaucrats in their cubicles, in their tiny little apartments, where they can work from home and never get dressed and never have to see a blue-collar person, and their Uber Eats gets knocked at their door, but you don't have to look at the guy who delivered it. He just knocks on your door and runs away. there's a real classist bent in all of this, that they're so grossed out that these useful people, the people who make the world go round, the people who deliver all your stuff and make sure that your stores are stocked and they do things and build things and they can fix things. Hell, they built a society in 3 weeks on the streets of Ottawa. The laptop and pajama class really grossed out that these blue collar people, largely from Alberta, were in their fancy, fancy white collar city. You can see that vein running through everything. But there, you asked me right off the top about what one of the other revelations was that really damning for the federal government. The head of OPP intelligence, Superintendent Morris, he is the guy that he communicates with the RCMP, with CSIS. If something is happening in Ontario, if it's a terrorist threat, a violent threat, extremist threat, he's the guy who knows about it. He collaborates with all these agencies, and he said that there was not a single threat of guns within the convoy, which also turned out to be true after the fact. Their intelligence ahead of time showed this, that there were no threats of violence or extremism within the convoy in any real way. And so it completely debunked the lies. And in fact, he blamed the politicization of the convoy protest for this lies and for him time-wasting hysteria. He said that they were getting phone calls at the OPP that people had signs that they didn't like. And so they were calling the OPP to come and investigate these people with signs they didn't like. Wow. What a time-wasting thing. But that's what they were inundated with. And he just said, it's because you had these politicians saying all these terrible things about the convoyers. So when the convoyers got there, the people of Ottawa had heard for 2 weeks that basically the KKK was rolling into town.
Yeah.
And so when they showed up, they're like, hi, KKK's here. What are you going to do about it? And it just wasted the OPP's time.
Hey folks, that was an excerpt from my show, Rebel Roundup. Now, to get the full meal deal, why not go to Rebel News Plus, sign up, and never miss a Rebel News Plus show in the future.